Good morning. Okay. Today, lesson 38. It will be published in a moment in Flocknote, via Flocknote, but I hope you grab the lesson from the foyer. All right, very good. So, what we are doing here is a continuation of Christ's busy day, part 3. So, we can imagine how busy the day might have been with all that we've been studying. The study for today's lesson would be the parable. The parable of the sower, and we will concentrate rather much focus on the message of the parable of the sower.
What gospel, Matthew?
Good question. I'm coming to it. Thank you. So, for this lesson, our text for this study would be from Gospel of Matthew, chapter 13, verses 3 to 23. And also a parallel account from Mark and Luke, Mark chapter 4, verses 3 through 25, and Luke chapter 8, verses 5 through 18. We would be going into Gospel of Matthew chapter 13 as our primary text. If you could open your Bibles, I think we'll follow along the study. There is quite a bit of reading. Gospel from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 13, 3 through 23. Do I have a reader, or shall I go ahead and read? Oh, okay.
13:3.
Yes, Matthew chapter 13, verses 3 through 25. Or 23, rather.
Then he spoke many things to them in parables, saying, Behold, the sower went out to sow. As he sowed some seed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. Some fell on stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. Some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprang up and choked them. But others fell on good ground and yielded a crop, some in 100, some in 60, some in 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. And the disciples came to him and says, Why do you speak to them in parables? And he answered and said to them, Because it has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. But whoever has, to him more will be given, and to he will have abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Therefore I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. And in them the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled, which says, Hearing you will hear, and shall not understand, and seeing you will see, and not perceive. For the hearts of this people have grown dull, their ears are hard of hearing, and their eyes have closed. Yes, they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their hearts and turn, so that I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they shall see, and your ears, for they hear. For assuredly I say to you that many prophets and righteous men desired to see what you see, and did not see it, and to hear what you hear, and did not hear it. Therefore, hear the parable of the sower. Excuse me. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand, then the wicked one comes and snatches away what is sown in his heart. And he who has received seed by the way, this is he who received seed by the wayside. But he who received the seed on the stony places, this is he who hears the word, and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures only for a while. For when the tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, immediately he stumbles. Now he who receives the seed among the thorns is he who hears the word and cares of the world, and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. But he who received the word on good ground is he who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and produces some 100-fold, some 60, some 30.
All right. Thank you, brother. It's quite a long reading here from Matthew chapter 13. Now, we've read certain things here. What is seen, what has seen, what is not seen, and what they hear, they do not hear. We have several of these. We've read through this. And I am sure that we have gone through this parable of the sower many times. I hope this is not the first time, but what I see in this is what I'll do my best in the next few minutes of this class on the parable of the sower, particularly the message. Now, again, this parable was told on this busiest day of Jesus Christ, right? So we could rather say it's been a very long day for him, a busy day, and mentally drowning maybe, because in chapter 12 we've seen that these hardened hearts, people, the scribes, asking for a sign, and when he healed the man with the demons, and they attributed to Beelzebub. And after all of this, now he starts teaching in parables. So the question I want to ask class is, what is the first parable of Jesus recorded in the scriptures?
It wasn't particularly ever said, but it's more like the first parables that were recorded.
Recorded, correct. Yes, I just said recorded in scriptures. In this chapter, in Matthew chapter 13, we see this parable of the sower is the first parable recorded in the scriptures, right? Now, why did Jesus speak in parables? We did talk about this, I think Brother Job discussed this in the last couple of sessions. Now, why did Jesus speak in parables? Yes, sister?
Because the people understood what parables were, and they could understand what he was saying. It was something that was familiar to them in those days.
But let's not forget, too, that literally the word parables and the word cast alongside.
Okay, cast alongside.
You see an earthly thing that has actually a heavenly interpretation.
Right, earthly story with the heavenly meaning that we've learned as a definition. Yes, sister?
Just picking up what Marianne said, he was meeting the people where they were.
Mhm.
Like if he were just to start preaching things that they didn't understand, he would have lost them right away.
Right.
But by speaking about familiar things that
Okay.
they could relate to,
Okay.
and then giving them
Sure.
Mhm.
Suresh, also figure at the time that many of the people probably did not read. Okay? Read well. When they hear it, they understand it, because a lot of the history is an oral tradition.
Okay.
There's no speech to lead the
Sister Kathy raised her hand.
Yes, and also within this parable, there's actually 3 stories that we have to walk away from. Or am I getting that?
Well, no, not really. So let us.
Actually,
Yes, Brother Johnson.
yeah, actually, I was thinking another one too, that if you got the hearts of men, those who would just, that's a nice story, to get my way.
Okay.
But some people would say, what does this mean? How do I apply it in my life?
Mm-hmm.
Exposes their own heart.
Okay. So let's get to the text. I was looking for some answers right from the text here. Yes, these are our thoughts, and our thoughts goes beyond what is there in the text, which is sometimes good, and sometimes maybe our thoughts direct us in a different way, another way. So Jesus started speaking in parables, right? And why did he speak in parables?
The people are hard of hearing.
Right? People, yes, that the prophecy might be fulfilled. The prophecy of Isaiah, right, might be fulfilled. And here in verses 14, or rather from 13 through 15, therefore I speak to them in parables. Again, I want you to focus on them here. I speak to them in parables because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. In that the prophecy of Isaiah might be fulfilled, their hearts are grown dull, right? We read in the verse 15. But then, yes, sister?
I was going to say, and also in verse 11, he says, because it's been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom, but to them it is not.
Right, that is, I'm coming to that. No, you're fine. So, why did Jesus speak in parables? Well, this is a part of the answer that the question has been asked. Now, let's look at the question. Before we go to that question, first, the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled in them, right? So, get your thought there and the word them. Secondly, Jesus is preparing his disciples that they may come across these hardened hearts later on in their ministry. Right? Thirdly, for you and I, our current generation, to perceive this message so that we do not harden our hearts at some point. So what is the takeaway here? It's spoken in parables. First is the prophecy is fulfilled because it's been told several times. How many prophets were sent to Israel? Countless. Well, we don't want to sit here and keep counting, right? Several. And what are these people doing? Their hearing has gone dull. And secondly, this is a preparation for his disciples, that they would keep coming across these hardened hearts. And thirdly, for you and I, for this current generation, that we would see the message, that we would hear, perceive what is being told here, so that our hearts may not grow dull.
You know, maybe we just have to take a look at the big word. They could see the parable
Mhm.
and actually do it. To exactly where you went through what Jesus was talking about.
Right. As we
They never went further than just the story itself.
Mhm. See the meaning in that, right? See the bigger picture. It is a heavenly meaning with an earthly story, what Jesus is teaching in these parables. Now, to my third point, there may be a question. How does one harden the heart? Well, it could be a discussion or a sermon for another time. Now, who asked this question? Right, his disciples asked this question. And what was the question?
Why do you speak in parables?
Why do you speak?
Parables.
Let's look at the question.
When you speak to them,
Why do you speak to them in parables? Right? Good catch. Why do you speak to them in parables? Now, when you read this question, who do you think they were? I mean, what groups of people were there present?
Pharisees and everyone
Pharisees.
Just a mic.
Oh, it is on. I'm sorry. So I'll. Okay.
There's also like the multitudes.
Multitudes. There are several. Obviously, we do come across Pharisees because we read of some questions in chapter 12, right? Trying to discredit Jesus. So, who else do we see?
All the people looking around and saying, who, even if I have a category, what Jesus was saying.
His mother and brothers were there.
Okay, his mother and brothers were there, multitude were there, Pharisees were there. Who else? His disciples. Right? His disciples. Now, when Jesus spoke this parable, his disciples were there. Hence, they asked these questions. Why do you speak to them in parables? Now, my question is, or my thought is, were these disciples not part of them?
Yes, they were.
But it sounded like them and not us.
Right. It sounded like, why do you speak to them in parables? Coming to the question, why do you speak to them? Did his disciples understood the parable?
No, not really.
No, because he ends up explaining it.
Right. In Mark chapter, let's go to Mark chapter 4 quickly, and we'll come back to this. Mark chapter 4, verse 13, and he said to them, do you not understand this parable? How then will you understand all the parables? To my second point earlier, Jesus is also preparing his disciples at the same time through these parables. And by the way, why do you think, the question right on here is, why do you think Jesus spoke this parable before all other parables?
What is the disciples? How to interpret all parables.
Right. For his disciples to interpret all parables that he's going to teach. And also, now we'll come to the message in a moment. I think time is running out quickly. He's about to say the parable of the sower. Okay? And he wants his disciples, what? As Brother Johnson said? Can you repeat that, Brother Johnson?
Sure. He was showing, make sure the disciples could understand.
Is all right. If disciples could understand all the parables, again, in Matthew chapter, I wrote the note, let me take a look. In Matthew chapter, I think it's 10, Jesus sending his 12 disciples out into the world, right? Now, his disciples need to understand all the parables that he's teaching. All right. So, aren't these disciples part of them in the question? They certainly are.
Yes, sir.
And how did Jesus separate his disciples from them?
By giving the interpretation.
Well, did he already give the interpretation?
He also
In his response, in Jesus' response, let's look at Matthew chapter 13, verses 11 through 16.
He also told them why he was teaching parables.
Yes, because it has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been. Jesus acknowledges his disciples' hearing and seeing. He says, blessed are your eyes and your hearing.
So they were actually
Mm-hmm.
part of them, but they were
Right.
aside from them as well,
Yeah.
because they understood what Jesus was saying
Mm-hmm.
and what he was doing.
Right. After the Jesus mentioned the Isaiah prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled, look at verse 16. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. Right? So he acknowledges his disciples.
His disciples were intimate
Yes.
with Jesus, where most of the other ones were not.
Mm-hmm.
You
All right. Can you repeat, Brother John? You have your mic. You have a microphone with you.
Because the disciples were intimate with Jesus, and they saw everything and heard everything that Jesus did and said, but most of the other ones were separate from the disciples
Right.
and did not see and hear what Jesus did, because I think a lot of times they were going for, I want to be with them.
So, taking our segue into the discussion now, Jesus knows the hearts of his disciples. He prayed before selecting them. Do you remember? He knows the hearts of these people, and he blesses their seeing and their hearing. So, obviously, it tells us the hearts of the disciples is soft, right?
Well, that's what I was gonna verify. Jesus, like you said, he prayed for the ones that he was gonna be using for his inner circle, the 12. And within the 12, there was even 4 that were even that much closer to him.
Mm-hmm.
And for that very reason, his apostles had to see everything and understand everything, because in Acts, what does he do?
Right.
He sends them out throughout the whole world to teach and so on and so forth.
Right.
It's very vital for them to understand everything.
So let's get to the content of this message. Oh, I'm sorry. Right. The hearts of the multitude, the people, right from many generations have grown dull. Prophets have been sent one after the other, but the hearts are grown dull. So Jesus knew that his disciples, their hearts are still soft, and he's preparing them so that they can perceive all the parables that he's about to teach. All right, let's get to the parable and the contents of the parable. Now, on a high level, what are the contents of this parable? In your outline.
Seed falls on 3 different types of soil.
Well, the contents are the actors, right? The sower, the seed, and the soils. All right. It is very possible that Jesus could see a farmer sowing seed in the manner he described as he told this parable. Do you see farmers today throwing the seed or sowing the seed? It's all machinery that does today, right? Well, the very closest example I can quote is in your yards. When you throw the seed, how do? You still have a machine in your hand, a small the tool, and then what does it do? It spreads, it broadcasts the seed. What I've seen growing up in the farms is here the farmer getting into the field in a basket, you have all the seed and he's just throwing, right? Throwing the seed.
Yeah, you might have a hole in the basket.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like there's more falls this way too.
So, yes, what happens when the seed is thrown into the air? It goes in different directions. Right. And the seed was stored in large bags, as Sister said. Yes, it's a method of broadcasting today we see, but then it is throwing. And while throwing the seed, it could fall anywhere. So typically the sower would walk along a path between 2 fields and throw seed into his field. Some seed would land on the road or path. Birds would eat it. And some on rocky places and spring up quickly. There's not much soil to it. The plant would wither when the sun comes out and scorched it. And so let's look at what it is. What does this parable mean? Let's turn our attention to Mark chapter 4, as it was explained by Jesus. Mark chapter 4, verse 14. The sower sows the word. So, and these are the ones by wayside where the word is sown, when they hear, Satan comes immediately and takes away the word that was sown in their hearts. So we learned in this parable that there are 4 kinds of soil, right? Well, actually, the first one is not a soil.
No, it's a footpath.
Right. Some seed fell by the wayside. So what is this wayside?
Where it says a footpath or whatever roads where people are walking.
Mm-hmm. So how does it relate to the heart?
Probably into path.
So what is path made of?
Kind of like a beat down.
It's a hard surface, isn't it?
Like some hearts.
Right. The wayside is referred to as here as hard surface. Now what happens to the seed that fell on this hard surface?
It just laid there.
It just lie there, right? Birds come
It
and
didn't do anything.
birds come and devour the seed.
That's why when I was in the wedding, something like rice or seeds.
Seed gets blown away, eaten by birds, because it is on a hard surface. The seed is going nowhere, just lying there. So, how is it in contrast, or not in contrast, how is it related to the heart?
Because the heart has become dull prior to the word being sown.
So, considering the hard surface for the seed and the hard, go ahead, sister.
I was just saying, it's not if your heart is hard.
Right.
Then the word won't.
Yeah, the heart is hardened and this word is on this heart. What is happening there?
It's not penetrating the
It's
heart.
not penetrating. That is right. It is not penetrating. And what is happening? The Satan, the wicked, is taking it away.
That's right.
Right?
Because the heart's hard already makes it very pliable for Satan to come in and take it away.
Right. Satan comes immediately and takes away the word that was sown in the hearts of these people. It is a hard surface. There is no sign of softness for this word to sink, or in the case of seed, there is no sign of soil where at least we could see a sign of penetrating. Well, the wicked ones comes and snatches. Many who came to hear or who came near to Jesus that day when this parable was spoken has hardened hearts, very shallow hearts. They are not prepared to take the word. The hearts are already hardened. Yes.
I also think a lot of them came to see who Jesus was. Okay, not so much to hear what he had to say or how he had to say it. They were just curious as to who is this man they call Jesus? What's he all about? So their hearts are already hard,
Right.
but they just wanted to see who he was.
Right. They just want to see who he was. They've already hardened, right? They're prepared that let's see who he was. They're not willing to take the word. And rather, they're trying to expose Jesus, isn't it? Discredit him. Okay, some seed fell on stony places. Mark chapter 4, verses 16. These likewise are the ones sown on stony ground, who, when they hear the word, immediately receive it with gladness, and they have no root in themselves, and so endure only for a time. Well, some seed fell on this rocky soil, right? And rocky soil is not all rock. It's a rocky soil. It's mixed with the soil. Now the seed fell on this soil. Yes, it did spring, or sprout rather. You see a plant, the seed sprouting, but what is happening to that plant? It has no roots, because you see rocks in there. It is not penetrating. The roots are not penetrating firm into the ground. And when the sun, pardon me?
Because it can't get to the ground.
Yeah, it can't get to the ground because you have rocks in there. It's a rocky soil. And you have mighty winds and you have sun scorching. What is happening? It withers. It dies out. But it did sprout though.
It's a good start, but it doesn't give a good finish.
Mhm. So, what are these rocks in the hearts of these people with rocky soil?
You can say we can see that he is possible.
Well, let's look at the text. How Mark explained this in Mark chapter 4. Afterward, when tribulation or persecution arises for the word's sake, immediately they stumble. It was a good start. There is some softness there, and the plant sprouted. So we received the word as yes, we think we are doing well in our spiritual growth, but what is happening? Right, the first tribulation. And persecution. Well, we haven't seen the persecution. That much I can say. What is it, brother?
It's opposite what he's saying. I didn't plan on getting these trials, tribulations. I was expecting maybe go measure.
Well, who would expect? If you expect, wouldn't you be prepared? Right?
Yeah.
If you know the storm is coming, people are prepared to move out of go to the secure area. But the tribulation comes. Now, is the tribulation optional in our lives? Did Jesus ever said that tribulation might come? Right. So the tribulations are here and the persecutions are here. And these are for the word's sake. And we stumble. That is the rocky soil. Some seed fell among thorns. So what are these thorns? Well, before that, in the analogy in this parable, well, you have this soft soil, wherein the seed is penetrated. You see a plant; it's blooming well, but then yet you see the thorns sprouting up. Well. Mm-hmm.
Because they're not deeply rooted.
It shows noted this one here has the capability to produce a crop, but it doesn't.
So, what are the thorns in this parable? Or, yes, sister said the cares of this world.
All the things that get in the way.
All the things that are getting in the way. Let us ask ourselves, what are those things that are getting in our way?
Church,
Yes, brother.
bigger cars, bigger houses, TV shows, bigger screen TVs,
Football games.
all the things that distract us from doing God's will.
Mm-hmm. Now, these are the ones sown.
Matthew chapter 6, verses 25 here, by the way. What did Jesus say there? Don't worry about this, don't worry about that.
Right.
These are people who didn't understand that part
Mm-hmm.
of having that life. Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself.
Yeah, but we don't,
Don't
do we?
worry about what you shall wear.
These are the ones who heard the word, but the cares of this world, in verse 19 of Mark 4, the deceitfulness of riches, and the desires for other things, entering in choking the word. Now the riches of, yes, brother.
But also, isn't it from the standpoint of, they want to be like everybody else, and don't want to be set aside from the world. Okay, so they want to be like the people next door.
Yeah, Brother Miller said, but don't they want to be as the people next door? Running in Ferraris? Is that what you're saying, brother?
Yeah, everybody's concerned about what's going on in the world and what they want better and better. So really, they're more concerned with the neighbor next door from the standpoint of, what do they have? I can do one better.
Okay.
Keeping up with the Joneses, basically.
Right. So what does the scripture says about all of this?
It becomes unfruitful. You're not being fruitful at all.
Well, I'm looking at the text right here. Yes, sister.
The key word here is the deceitful.
Deceitfulness, yes,
Yeah.
deceit.
We think that's what we want. We think
Correct.
That's what we should be doing and having.
Yes.
Being deceived.
Right. The deceitfulness of riches. Well, having a Ferrari is not wrong, but therein lies the deceit and how you get to that richness, right? How you want to see yourself rich.
Exactly.
So what is it doing? It's become a thorn in your side, right? How can you grow? How can the plant grow? Yes, it's sprouted. It is initially in a good soil. It's sprouted. But when this thorn arises, how can it grow?
The only way it can grow is with moisture, and the moisture is the hearing of.
Well, every step of the way you have this thorn.
Or remove the thorns.
Right. Yes. So the deceitfulness of riches and what else? The desire. My own desires is stopping me from growing. It's become a thorn, another thorn. What do I desire for? And what does Paul say in Corinthians? Are we the people still desiring for milk?
For milk and not meat.
Mm-hmm. So here the people Jesus talking about, explaining that deceitfulness, this is a warning, there is a deceit in rich, but rich by itself is not wrong. The cares of this world, well, we haven't talked much about the cares. What are some of the cares of this world? Brother Johnson said family. How can the family be? Isn't it the family a blessing from God? How dare you say it's a care? I mean, it's a...
The cares of
Well, when you consider the situation that goes on in the family sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but especially back in those days, even now sometimes, if your family isn't a believer, you are, man, because I think you know about what
Yeah,
they do.
right? Sometimes
That was one of the biggest problems that the Hebrews addressed.
right. I want to focus on this scripture only, right? This in verse 18. What are other thorns? Let's list those thorns at least. We're talking about a family here, the cares of this world, right? Your family, your spouse, your children, your mother, your father, right? Your job, your friends, your neighbors. Can they become thorns in?
if they lie and deceit, yes.
Well, how can they become thorns? They will certainly. Your child wants this, your spouse wants this, because you want something else out of your own desire as the neighbor has it. So how can you grow with all of these thorns?
You can't. You really can't.
You really can't. So what is happening here? All these thorns are choking this plant, and all these desires of us are choking our spiritual growth, and it is becoming unfruitful. We become unfruitful. Yes, Brother
Part
Miller.
of the thorns, too, is, I would say probably the biggest thorn is selfishness
Mhm.
of what I want as compared, let's say, to what Stella wants, and I think my wants outweigh her wants,
Mhm.
and that's the biggest thorn of all, because then we're not getting along.
Right.
It makes me think of James, where he says, life is but a vapor.
Correct.
We need to really focus on the Lord because,
Mhm.
this world can easily distract us with
Right.
anything and
Now, I want to remind us of what Jesus said to his disciples in Matthew 10 before he sent them into the world. What did he say? Do not have two tunics. The one, right,
You cannot serve God and man.
Well, yeah, in Matthew earlier, right. But what he's preparing his disciples. Do not worry about these things.
Yes, right.
Pardon me? Yes, take only one tunic. It will be provided to you on a daily basis.
Yeah, don't bring money, don't bring.
Right, don't bring money with you. You would be provided. How much more it is valid in our own lives? I haven't seen tomorrow's sunshine, but yet it is be provided. I have that assurance. So all these desires that is sprouting in our hearts, making us unfruitful. All right. Others fell on the good ground. Now, what is the good ground in the parable? Good soil. How do you define as a good soil? Well, soft heart. Well, good ground does not have rocks in it, do they? Good ground does not have rocks in it. There is no worry of tribulations or neither persecutions, which means there are no rocks, right? It's not a rocky soil. It is a good ground. It's a good soil, wherein the roots would penetrate deep and firm it up that you can grow as a big tree. The root is penetrating gradually and holding very strong. It will withstand any amount of scourge of heat that shines on it, or neither stormy winds would do any damage.
Good fruit, and some bear 100-fold, some 60, some 30, so their hearts are very soft, they're really dedicated to God, they're really wanting to do.
Yeah, but how do we do that? They are. So how is it happening?
By being in the Word and studying the Word and being.
Well, let's look at in this parable. A seed is thrown in the ground, a good ground. It's a good soil, right? It's not a rocky soil. There are no thorns in it.
Moisture and everything else to help germinate the seed.
The moisture, the water, somebody planted and somebody is watering it.
And it's germinating the seed.
Right.
Because the seed's getting warm and it's shooting the sprout up through the ground. It's almost as if the soil is humus.
Yes, there is no much water. You're giving the opportunity for the thorns and thistles to come up from the ground, right? You cultivate it. You're preparing the soil. It's not a one-time thing, right?
Already been cultivated.
Yes.
It's clear it's a lot of weed.
Which means not allowing the thorns to bother along the way. This is the good soil.
And also, isn't God watering it and growing because of our soft?
Well, let's put it this way: Are we receiving the water? Is the word planted in us?
Yes.
Did we stop there? Is somebody watering it?
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
The teachings, the gatherings, the preaching, the teaching. We allow ourselves to be here, allow our hearts to receive the teaching, and we are growing. If we stop doing that, we're giving room to the rocks to get in, thorns to get in.
It's also watering our hearts.
Yes, sister?
And this is the only one that produces fruit. And
Correct.
inside the fruit are more seeds.
That's right.
And seeds, and this is the only way that the life cycle continues.
All right, so
And the other ones will continue to the next generation.
correct. And on that note, let's go to the conclusion of the author here. This parable explained to his followers why he had been rejected by the Jewish leaders. Right? Jesus was rejected by Jewish leaders. This parable explained to his followers why in the days ahead, when they began their own preaching, some people would accept the gospel and others would not. This parable explained to his followers today why we often experience mixed reactions to our sowing of the seed of the kingdom. Each person must decide for themselves what they're going to do with the gospel. Author says the most important lesson we can see from this parable is in the phrase, the sower went out to sow. It is my personal observation. You may agree to it. Yes, it is. The sower did sow the seed, right? But what is more important rather. What are we talking about here today in all of this study? We are not talking about the sower. We are not talking about the seed either. Talking about the ground, right?
And we're talking about the hearts
Hmm.
of those who are with the sower.
Right. We're talking about the different soils, our hearts. Now, I think we're about time. I have a couple of questions that you might want to ask ourselves. So these are the questions. In our daily growth, yes, the seed has been sown, and we are growing, and we are getting proper nutrients every day. Are we not?
We should.
We should. So the questions that we need to ask ourselves, what soil am I yesterday? And what soil am I today? Well, we have seen some transformation, isn't it? We were once bad soil, but we're trying our best to be a good soil. What soil am I today? And what soil do I want to be tomorrow?
The same soil, if not better soil than you were the day before.
And why should I ask these questions to myself on a daily basis? Right.
It's a question of growth.
Question of growth.
Do you want to grow more in the Word? Do you want to grow more in the Spirit?
When you say grow more, again, in the context of this parable, when you ask these questions to yourself, are you allowing any thorns to come along? Are you allowing rocky soil to be right around you? Who's this rocky soil again?
According to the parable, no. But in all actuality, you do want the thorns to come off because sometimes those thorns help you grow spiritually even better.
But would you allow it to overthrow you?
Pardon?
Would you allow that to overthrow you?
No. You use that to make you grow better.
So the question to ourselves is this interrogation on a daily basis. When I ask these questions, what is happening? What does it? Yes, self-assessment. What does it do to me? Because yes, you are. You have the family. You have the neighbors. You have friends. You have riches. Your eye would not go away from all of this. Yet you have to maintain this, right? Yet you have to grow. Correct. It gives a good assessment of ourselves. So no matter how many times we read this parable, we study this parable, there is something that strikes our thought process, that we look into ourselves, in our own hearts, see where we are lacking. Well, I appreciate your attention. I think I did something valuable to the class. I think Brother Job would continue this on Wednesday night. 38. Yes, sister.
Brother Joe and Shirley, okay?
Yes, Sister is sick, and Brother Job taking care of